The Middle East hotpot has been boiling, Israeli warplanes were shot down, American troops fought in Turkey, and Trump was in a hurry to get to Kissinger. Zhonghao 02-11. In recent days, the hotpot in the Middle East has boiled over. Let's start with a couple of headlines. 1. On February 10, Israel's defense ministry confirmed that an F-16 fighter jet had been shot down by Syrian anti-aircraft fire. It crashed in the northern border area and 2 pilots escaped. This is an interesting thing to say, because the shooting could have been a decoy. Because the process of media exposure worth pondering, because the Israeli military said on the day of the first radar detects an Iranian drone from Syrian territory into the airspace, Israeli helicopters scrambled to intercept the unmanned aerial vehicle, UAV, then reverse tracking. Israeli forces deployed aircraft in Syria's control of unmanned aerial vehicle, UAV, Iran targets for air strikes, but it was the Syrian anti-aircraft artillery shot AF-16 fighter. The plane crashed in Syria territory. And according to the Syrian state news agency, Sana 10 reports quoted the Syrian military sources, the Israeli Air Force planes attacked the Syrian military facilities in the day, counterattacked Syrian air defense system, several Israeli planes were shot down. From the above logic, we can see that if there is a UAV in the first place, then it is a counterattack that enticed the enemy deeply. If there were no drones, that would be an Israeli raid. Either way, it is rare for Israeli jets to be shot down, suggesting that Syria's air defenses can pose a major threat to Israel. In the latest round of airstrikes, Israel has hit 12 targets in Syria, including 3 Syrian air defense facilities and 4 military installations believed to be Iranian in Syria. This engagement is different from the past. This is a direct dealing between Iran and Israel. Israel hit Syria, Iran's military targets. If not Iran's help, and Syria can't shoot down Israeli warplanes. 2. According to media reports, the U.S. State Department spokesman Nolte said, the United States, with regard to the escalating violence in the region near the Israeli border, deeply concerned and strongly support for Israel to self-defense sovereignty. Mr. Nolte said the US was urging Iran to end its efforts to threaten peace and stability. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Tuesday night that Iran and Syria must be held responsible for the day's drone attacks. Israel will continue to take all necessary measures to safeguard national sovereignty and security. Iran has denied any involvement in the shooting down of Israeli warplanes, saying the comments were absurd. In addition, 10-day Russian President Vladimir Putin and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu Israeli attacks in Syria by telephone discussion. Mr. Putin said Russia's advocated avoiding new actions causing new antagonism in the Middle East. From the above, we can confirm the following 6 signals. First, Israel's frequent airstrikes on Syrian government military targets and Iranian military targets. Second, Israel is ready to carry out airstrikes. Iran and Syria will continue to fight back. Neither Iran nor Israel is ready for a major war, but the future war will not be ruled out. 5. The United States supports Israel's offensive against Syrian government forces and Iranian forces in Syria. Russia opposes the Israeli offensive and advocates a détente. Iran and Israel do not want to escalate the conflict because they are not ready to face a big war, and they don't want to spend too much. America wants Israel to attack the Syrian army military facilities in Syria and Iran, in hoping to impede Russia and Iran in Syria power formation. So the United States in facing the north, the pressure will be smaller. Mr. Putin quickly called Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to stop the possibility. Mr. Putin's subtext, Israel cannot be an enemy of Russia. 3. According to Russia Today television website on February 4, according to the report, Turkish Deputy Prime Minister warned that wearing the same uniform, American soldiers who fight with Syria's Kurdish militia may be the target of Turkish forces, because it is difficult to distinguish between them in battle. As part of his Olive Branch campaign, Turkish forces are pushing ahead in the Kurdish-controlled Syrian province of Afrin. The Turkish government had complained that American soldiers and Kurdish militias were mixed up, which was unacceptable to the alliance. He stressed that anyone carrying weapons and fighting with the Kurds is our target. But Bozda added that neither side wants an open conflict. In addition, according to German media reports, the Turkey in a battle lost 26 German Leopard tank, as well as by Syria's Kurdish an armed helicopter was shot down. Based on these information we can know, in the midst of Syria's Kurdish army, actually mixed with many American soldiers dressed in Kurdistan, these people are in fact helped Syrian Kurds to fight the Turkish army. From the perspective of the United States, although Turkey is a NATO ally, but it is more important to the United States in the Middle East to create a second Israel, to collaborate with Israel. In this way so can the United States control of the situation in the Middle East. The United States, however, temporarily can't have a conflict with Turkey, because the damage is too big to NATO, the Middle East strategy impact is too severe. So in the face of Turkish offensive, US will only make American soldiers put on clothes of Kurdish forces to participate in combat. In fact, there have been rumors that Russia killed US troops in the fight against terrorists. On the afternoon of February 8, Trump met with former US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger in the Oval Office, according to media reports. This is the third time that Mr. Trump has met Mr. Kissinger since he took office, but unlike in the past, the White House did not immediately reveal what Mr. Trump and Mr. Kissinger were talking about. The photo shows Kissinger talking, accompanied by gestures, while Mr. Trump listens attentively. Before the talks, Trump revealed on his Twitter account that his meeting with Kissinger would discuss three aspects of North Korea, the Middle East and China. It is important to note that in the past month 25th, Kissinger in the House Armed Services Committee has just attended a hearing. The hearing, Kissinger said three challenges facing the United States, North Korea, the Middle East, and big power relations. Trump's many big strategy will consult Kissinger, not least because Mr. Kissinger in American politics has a high status. Another important reason is that he is one of the core of the financial interest group. One of the most important supporters of Mr. Trump's election victory is the group. Therefore, in my opinion, listen to the views of Henry Kissinger. To the United States is to listen to Mr. Kissinger's strategic advice, listen to the opinions of the financial interest group behind Kissinger. And if you look at them, they're talking about North Korea, the Middle East and China. Together, these three questions seem to be very interesting in my opinion. Because North Korea is closely related to China, the Middle East is closely related to the United States. Nowadays, inter-Korean relations is easing, and the United States did not have explicitly uncompromising attitude, but continue to exert more pressure on North Korea. This is actually exert Chinese pressure, showed an uncompromising attitude. So if Mr. Trump and Mr. Kissinger are talking about these three issues, Mr. How thinks Mr. Trump is asking Mr. Kissinger how he deals with China and North Korea and the Middle East. If that is right, then America's intransigent attitude is the illusion that America wants to raise the price for China and try to keep the situation from being too bad for America. In accounting for my view, the compromise may be inevitable, because the United States to fight both China on the Korean Peninsula and China to fight, and Russia in the Middle East, soon or later US has to let loose one of the two. The United States has a strategic core interest in the Middle East, and it can't be let go, so it can theoretically only let go the Korean Peninsula. Therefore, it is important to compromise in the Korean Peninsula, to avoid loss of both Middle East and Korea Peninsula. Therefore, the United States must hope to make concessions on the peninsula. In exchange China will cooperate with the United States in the Middle East. However, it is not possible for China to do this. China is unlikely to cooperate with the United States in the Middle East, and China has its own independent foreign policy. Therefore, the compromise between the two sides is ideal. The United States offers the peninsula concessions, China and the Middle East as far as possible to take a hands-off approach. That would require a lot of ingenuity, which is probably why Mr. Trump consulted Mr. Kissinger. For China, it is now to have a strong support for a détente between the South and the North, which has forced the United States to back down. Because, as long as the peninsula continues to ease, the United States will have less leverage on the Korean Peninsula, and the longer the whole deal is, the greater the loss. Therefore, how to ease the situation on the peninsula North Korea and South Korea becomes China-US trade bargain chips. It was also about the next evolution of the peninsula scission in subtlety and suspense. The Middle East between Israel and Iran, Syria, began to a limited war. Turkish and American troops have been fighting for military action in Syria, and at the same time Trump and Kissinger talking about the Middle East, Korea, and China's problems. This is a very interesting and clever game. After talking to Kissinger, the situation in the Middle East is becoming increasingly tense, and the next step in Trump's move will be very interesting. That, of course, is an important sign that we are trying to figure out what is going on.